They were painted as saints, pure, fragile, powerless, draped in lace, seated in parlors bathed with candlelight. Their portraits hung in gilded frames. But behind plantation walls, white women carried super nasty secrets they never wanted the world to uncover. Secrets of domination, jealousy, obsession, and disturbing realities that broke the bodies and souls of enslaved black men and women. Behind locked doors, away from the polished halls where guests sipped tea and praised their refinement, another story unfolded. In shadows lit only by a trembling candle, muffled cries echoed through heavy walls. These were not the cries of children or the rustle of servants. They were the cries of torment, pain forced into silence, secrets suffocated in hidden rooms. What if the so-called ladies of refinement were hiding the filthiest lies of all? Tonight we unlock their secret world. The 18th and 19th centuries stand as the heart of slavery's brutal empire in the American South and Caribbean. Mansions rose from red soil and sugar fields, symbols of elegance and wealth. Yet every column and every chandelier was built on the backs of enslaved men and women, their labor wrung out under the burning sun. But cruelty did not stay in the fields. It seeped into the parlors, the bedrooms, the hidden spaces of the home. Society painted white women as delicate flowers, victims of their husbands' dominance, helpless in a patriarchal world. Literature described them as pure and powerless. But the truth was far filthier. Within the walls of the household, they carried devastating authority. They ruled kitchens, nurseries, and bedrooms. They watched enslaved women like hawks, inspecting every gesture, every glance, punishing even imagined slights. They directed cruelty toward black men assigned to serve them closely, stable hands, cooks, personal attendants, men forced to obey in silence no matter the demand. Imagine serving the very person who, by day, required you to lace her gown or polish her silver, but who, by night, transformed into your tormentor. Imagine the suffocating dread of being summoned to a room, knowing the door would close and no one would hear your cries. And it wasn't just men who abused power. Women carried disturbing obsessions of their own. They enforced silence with a viciousness history tried to bury. Publicly, men were the masters of the fields, the visible rulers of plantation life. But privately, women wielded power that could be just as deadly. Mistresses controlled the rhythm of domestic work, every step of the household. They decided who entered the nursery, who cooked the meals, who carried the water, who endured the punishments. For enslaved women, that meant being forced into servitude as maids, cooks, wet nurses, always under the mistress's gaze. For enslaved men, it meant daily proximity as body servants, stable hands, or domestic workers, proximity that became vulnerability. This was not freedom inside the walls. It was another battlefield. Black men and women were trapped, their humanity reduced to labor, their dignity erased by the mistress's constant surveillance. And when silence was broken, punishment followed swiftly. Refusal, resistance, or even hesitation could bring lashings, confinement, or worse, death disguised as discipline. The cycle of domination ran endlessly. Masters exploited black women for their own desires. Mistresses, consumed by jealousy or craving power, unleashed their rage on those very women, or turned their focus toward black men in disturbing ways that history dared not print. But when the doors closed, when no one was watching, what unspeakable acts unfolded? Behind closed doors, the truth turned even filthier. Secret chambers, attics, and cellars became theaters of cruelty, where white mistresses acted without witness. In these hidden spaces, the line between power and obsession blurred into disturbing rituals of control. Jealousy-driven violence erupted most often. If a master forced himself upon an enslaved woman, as so many did, the wife's fury rarely turned toward the husband. Instead, it rained down on the powerless woman. Enslaved black women were beaten bloody for simply being chosen victims of white men's predation. They were burned with hot irons, mutilated, or made to labor until they collapsed, punished for crimes they never committed. The cruelty was not random. It was obsession, an unspeakable hunger to reassert dominance, to remind those women that their bodies could never belong to anyone but the mistress's wrath. But some mistresses carried a different kind of disturbing obsession. They turned their gaze toward black men forced into daily service, body servants who laced their gowns, stable hands who brushed their horses, attendants who prepared their baths. These men became pawns in a dangerous and filthy game. The door would close, the key would turn, and the silence of the household became the perfect mask. Refusal was impossible. Consent was unimaginable. Survival often meant submission. The filthy lies of purity allowed these women to act without suspicion. Society refused to imagine them capable of desire, much less unspeakable acts of coercion. This cloak of innocence became their greatest shield. Behind lace curtains and perfumed airs, some mistresses degraded, mocked, and humiliated enslaved men, stripping them of dignity and forcing them into silence under the constant threat of exposure. For if whispers escaped, it was not the white woman who paid with her life, it was the black man, accused of assault, lynched, or mutilated to preserve her innocence. Psychological warfare became its own form of torment. Some women reveled in humiliation, forcing enslaved men to endure mockery, to stand stripped of their humanity, to carry the unbearable weight of unspeakable secrets. Others manipulated enslaved women, tormenting them with accusations, isolating them, or using their children as leverage. The nursery itself became a site of cruelty, where mothers lived in terror of seeing their children torn away in retaliation for imagined offenses. Whispers spread in enslaved communities that some mistresses dabbled in ritualistic punishments, strange ceremonies cloaked in secrecy, acts so bizarre they blurred into legend. Whether rooted in truth or amplified by fear, these rumors spoke to one reality. Enslaved men and women endured horrors behind closed doors that words could scarcely contain. These weren't accidents of history. They were deliberate, filthy abuses woven into the structure of slavery itself. And the scars were permanent. Black women bore the double burden, first violated by white men, then punished by white women. Every glance from a master risked becoming a death sentence at the hands of his jealous wife. Every whispered rumor could invite unspeakable violence. Their bodies were battlegrounds, torn apart not only by male power, but by female rage. Black men carried silent torment that history often ignored. They were robbed of dignity, masculinity, and humanity, forced into roles where even survival meant surrender. They could not speak, could not confess, could not warn their own children, for the system silenced them with death. The pain remained unspoken, carved instead into their posture, their silence, their haunted eyes. The trauma seeped into generations. Children born from these disturbing encounters carried fractured identities. Some were ripped from their mothers, sold as property, or hidden away as reminders of dirty secrets too shameful for white families to acknowledge. Bloodlines bent and twisted under the weight of lies, and the silence became another form of bondage. Imagine living every day in fear of being summoned to a locked chamber. Imagine the suffocating dread of hearing your name spoken softly by a woman whose power could destroy you in silence. Imagine carrying a secret so filthy it devoured you, yet one you could never confess without signing your own death warrant. These were not just acts of cruelty. They were stories that broke hearts, erased dignity, and scarred generations forever. And yet, for all the silence, the truth refused to stay buried. Slave narratives began to peel back the mask. Testimonies from women like Harriet Jacobs revealed not only the predations of white men, but the wrath of white mistresses. Her words described jealous wives who inflicted punishments that broke bodies and spirits, exposing the lie of female innocence. Others spoke of the mistress's wrath, a terror that haunted enslaved households as much as the master's lash. Letters and diaries written in moments of candor slipped through history's cracks. Some white women confessed their frustrations, their jealousies, even their obsessions. Carefully worded, often veiled, but enough to reveal what polite society pretended not to see. Their own words betrayed them, leaving stains no time could wash away. Whispers carried through enslaved communities preserved the truths long after the mistresses died. Tales of cruelty, of unspeakable acts behind locked doors were passed down in oral histories. These whispers ensured that the nasty truths, no matter how deeply buried, were never fully erased. Modern historians would uncover more. Patterns of abuse hidden in domestic records, testimonies long ignored, and the ultimate evidence, genetic revelations, DNA that tied white families to descendants of enslaved people, proof of unions born not of love, but of coercion, obsession, and filthy secrets white women never wanted revealed. The facade of purity could not last forever. The filthy lies began to unravel,